Good evening and welcome to the February 25th, 2019 meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen. In accordance with open meeting law, I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded and ask if there's anyone in the audience also recording the meeting. Seeing none, could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I move on with the regular agenda, as you can see, we only have 3 board members here tonight. 2 of our board members are a little under the weather and aren't with us. So all agenda items that need a vote will need all 3 members to vote in the affirmative or negative to get, well, in the affirmative to pass a motion. While I don't see anything controversial on our agenda that raises any red flags, it's up to each applicant if they want to move forward. So when you have an agenda item, if you're here for an agenda item, I will ask you if you want to move forward with 3 members, okay? So we have no public comment. We have a public hearing for Route 12 Automotive Motor Vehicle Class 2 license at 603 Stelspich Street. Is there a representative? I'll entertain a motion to open the hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The hearing is open. Good evening. Hello. If you could please first give us your name and your address for the record.
My name is Andrew. Address is 603 South Street, Auburn.
Okay. And could you tell us a little bit about your business application, please?
I own Route 12 Automotive at 603 Southbridge Street, and I'm applying for my used car dealer license.
Okay. And you've been there?
Yes, we have.
So what have you been doing?
Automotive repair. And we're just taking over an existing license that's there anyways for the most part.
And in your packet, we have your insurance information, a layout of the property. It's been before the planning board, and you've been before DCG. Are you familiar with the conditions that the DCG has recommended the board adopt?
I am.
Do members have any questions or comments? Mr. Holstrom.
Just one quick question. Through the chair, I know that it sounds like you're just taking over the operation. You're not going to change the operation at all? You're not going to add anything or subtract anything from what the standard operation is for what you've done?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So just for the record, I'll just comment that you need to follow up with the sewer department regarding floor drains.
Yes.
And any signage permits from the building department, and create a handicapped accessible parking space.
Yes.
And of course, the overall is to get any necessary permits and inspections from the town boards, departments, and commissions.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else on this? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the license.
Is there a motion to close the hearing? Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Is there a motion regarding the application?
Now I'll make a motion to approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all of the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Good luck on your new venture.
Thank you.
We have no communications. Under Board of Selectmen general items, we have a one-day beer and wine license for the Knights of Columbus St. Joseph's Church for a fundraiser at 68 Central Street for charities and scholarships on April 6, 2019. Is there a representative here? Yes. Good evening. If you could come up, please. Again, first, if you could give your name and address for the record.
Certainly. Steve McGrath, 34 Carroll Street.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about this? This is, I think we've done this a few years, but
yes, this will be our 13th night at the races. It's a fundraiser, a one-night event. We have dinner. We have a big track that we put out, like a big game board, and we have raffles. and all the proceeds go to the charity fund, which is split between our charity fund for general requests, and then 50% go to scholarships. And we're requesting the one-day license for beer and wine.
Okay, and I think the only thing missing here in our packet, which you can give to Sharon, is the liability insurance. So just a question, you'll be serving the alcohol from, on this diagram, again, from where it says kitchen, from behind there?
Yes, there's a dedicated window that's just for the beer and wine.
Same operation as
Same operation exactly as it has been in the past. We have 2 TIPS certified servers, and
was it you or Mr. Butler that met with DCG?
it was Mr. Butler.
Okay, so the DCG did recommend that the board adopt 2 conditions, which is you shall obtain all necessary permits and inspections from town departments, boards, and commissions, and the applicant shall obtain any necessary approvals from state agencies. Just so you're aware of that. Do board members have any questions or comments?
Nothing here.
I'll just say that I've actually attended this event, and you do a great job at watching, how the alcohol is served, or, no young people up at the window trying to sneak and buy beer, and certainly for the type of event it is, there's certainly not any overconsumption of beer, so you do a great job with that, so thank you.
And I understand, because we are a nonprofit in the past, that the fee has been waived, and I'd like to throw that out for consideration, that the fee be waived.
Okay. First, we're on the motion for the one-day beer and wine license. Is there a motion?
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the license, provided all the applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with all and with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion under the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the fee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thanks. Have a great event.
Thank you very much.
Coming in.
And we have tickets if anybody wants to join us, April 6th, right down the road.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to approve the votes and sign notes relative to a $2,305,000 bond issue. I'm not sure who's going to speak to this.
Madam Chair, I'm going to speak on this matter.
Thank you.
So we went and we sought bids for a bond issue of $2.305 million, general obligation bonds for various equipment and middle school projects and LED street lighting, as well as a portion for sewer rehab, $200,000. I'm happy to say that we did get a good bid, interest cost of about 2.46, with a forced premium of $254,000. Under the new reform regulations, we're allowed to utilize a portion of that premium to pay down a portion of the bonds up front. So the net amount that we have for bonds payable that you'll be signing notes for is for $2,125,000 because of the utilization of that pay down. In addition to that, we had a rating, which I know is on this agenda under item 6A, I believe. I think it's an appropriate time to discuss that as well.
Excuse me 1 second. Could I have a motion to move up agenda item 6A and discuss it at this time?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we've moved up the Standard & Poor's bond rating, so feel free to, both of you, openly discuss this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the rating was provided to you in advance. This is what we received last week after the rating. Julie and I and members of the management team reviewed the rating. We had a few comments. We actually had a conference call with S&P. I can tell you that they affirmed our AA+ rating, which we're happy to report. and somewhat, I don't want to say disappointed. I think there was an expectation that we could have received a AAA. But as you read in the report, our wealth factors really didn't measure up to other AAA communities. That's something that really is out of our control, although over the long term, I think we need to focus on our housing stock, try to get some rental units and some housing that will attract higher level type income residents. But that being said, I think there were some positive comments about our financials, that they do measure up to a AAA rating. And that's something that we will continue to improve upon, and hopefully that improvement will offset some of those wealth factors that do not measure up to other AAA communities.
Awesome, well done.
Yes. It's not just maintaining the rating, it's the work that you guys put into this and the build-up for the bond rating review, so congratulations. I know that you spent many, many hours, days, and long nights working on that, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Holstrom, is there a motion?
Okay. I move that the board votes that the sale of the $2,125,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2019 bonds of the town dated March 13th, 2019, known as the bonds, to UBS Financial Services Incorporated at the price of $2,357,794.25, and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The bond shall be payable on March 15th of the years, and in the principal amounts and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. And this has to be read into the record.
Does this, do all the amounts need to be read into the record?
Can we just say as submitted?
Do all the separate amounts for each year need to be read into the record, or can we say as submitted?
I do have this 50.
Right, but do we have to, in the motion, does it have to be?
I would say as provided.
Okay, as provided.
All right, as provided, and then further voted in the respective rates as follows, and that goes from the year 2020 to the year 2034. Further voted that in connection with the marketing and sale of the bonds, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated February 13th, 2019, and a final official statement dated February 20th, 2019, known as the official statement, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. Further voted that the bond shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions as are set forth in the official statement. Further voted that the town treasurer and the board of selectmen be and are hereby authorized to execute and deliver a continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. And further voted that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures in such form as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the bonds. And further voted that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and are hereby authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them, or any of them, to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom, for reading that. Is there any discussion under the motion? Mr. La Liberty.
I just have one question through the chair. Will this have to go before town meeting at our next one, I think in May?
No.
If there's nothing else, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous.
Need to sign and have them notarized.
Yeah, can I use your fancy pen? I like thin pens.
Three?
Yeah, I'm gonna move for 1 second. You need to sit here.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to forfeit. Sorry, I couldn't be up and
No, that's okay.
today. It's awful. Awful. And these are all the bonds.
These are all copies, Debbie, huh? Are these copies?
They're all different
They're
bonds.
different ones, yeah.
Yeah. 15 separate bonds. That would not be good.
No. Don't want to knock this over.
I wonder, I hope a tree doesn't come through the window.
Oh, please. I'll be sitting here like this now. Oh, I don't have a window behind me.
This is signature, no litigation, and official statement certificate.
So that just means there's no litigation pending?
Right.
Okay. This is a statement saying we have no litigation pending.
Thank you.
Same.
The next one is the tax certificate.
These are still litigation to this one?
Okay.
There's 4 of everything. No. This is the tax certificate.
Four of those, right?
Yes.
The next 4 are the tax certificate.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the last one of those. This is the continuing disclosure certificate, and there's 4 of these also. Get to the end.
Excuse the next word, to continuing disclosure certificate, which means we'll disclose.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Okay.
Enough to sign.
Our new YouTube viewers are getting quite the show tonight, huh? Watching us sign documents for...
I know.
Thank you.
Well, we're muted to 10 viewers. I think we scared them.
Okay, this is the one we're looking for. And that is it.
Thank you, and we thank our town treasurer, Mary Ann Murphy, and our town clerk, Deb Grimo, for ensuring a smooth process with this each time we do it. Thank you. Moving on, the agenda, we have a vote to transmit the Town Manager CFO fiscal year 2020 budget to the Finance Committee in accordance with the Town Charter and bylaws. Mr. Kazanovich.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I know you have been reviewing the budget over the past 2 weeks. We did forward some questions that was presented by Selectmen Liberty for your review and consideration as well. So we're just looking to commence budget hearings with the Finance Committee starting this Wednesday, provided that you're prepared to transmit the budget at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions. A few questions have come in along the way, but if you have any other questions that you would like to address at this point, I think now would be the appropriate time to do so.
Do members have any questions, additional questions? Mr. La Liberty.
I already asked this question through email, but I just wanted to reiterate in case anyone was listening at home. Could you go over when the last time the town went up to 2.5% was?
So we did provide this to the board, and we have some history that we provided as well. We have a chart going back to 2011 that we have not taxed to 2.5 over that period of time. That's a 9-year period, and quite honestly, if we went back to 2010, I'm not so sure we taxed at 2.5 at that point as well. Over that period of time, we've accumulated excess levy of $5.3 million, saving the taxpayers of this community about $28.5 million over that period of time. When we look at a comparison of Central Mass communities, it's clear that there are a number of communities in Central Mass that are currently taxing at the full levy of 2.5, and that those numbers have been provided to you. We are committed on an annual basis to try to minimize the level of taxation that we pass on to the residents of our community. Although I know this budget is utilizing close to 100% of 2.5, I think there's history to show that town administration's recommendation normally is higher than what we end up with in the fall. We look at those budgetary numbers, we look at actuals for the period that closes out on June 30th. We make adjustments based upon new growth, local receipts, final state numbers, in an attempt to drive that number down as best we can.
Anything else? Mr. Holstrom, did you have anything?
No.
Is there a motion regarding transmitting the budget?
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen transmits the budget to the Finance Committee for their review and action.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion under the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. We have just a couple people here, so I'll entertain a motion to move up agenda item 6B, discussion on the potential SAFER grant application.
I'll make a motion to move up item 6B.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Chief? Chief, I know we put this on the agenda last week when we set up the agenda, and as you can see, we have two members who are under the weather tonight and who aren't here. You're welcome to move forward with your discussion, and if you choose, you can just reach out to the other members, however you want to move forward.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board. I actually just confirmed with the town manager, I don't believe we were looking for any vote.
Right, but you want to move forward with
Yes.
the discussion, and then you can reach out to the other members if they have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
So, thank you. So, as many of you know, for many, many years, I have been talking about trying to get our minimum staffing from 6 to 7 members on the group. I've made that request formally in my budget presentations every year since 2013, so for the past 6 years. And in this current fiscal year, working with town administration, we were able to make some movement on that, and we had 2 new career firefighters come on this past January. So currently, we have 2 groups at 9 and 2 groups at 8 members. The budget that you actually just voted to pass on to the Finance Committee has another career position. It's a half-year position starting in January, so that will get 3 of the groups up to 9. So again, this is a request that you've heard me talk about many times. We've been at a minimum staffing level of 6 for about 18 years. So what I'm presenting tonight for discussion with the board, I'll just pass this around. I apologize. I just finalized these numbers today. I think I got a couple extra copies for.
There you go.
Thank you.
Chief, if we can just have just a minute for
Absolutely.
members to review.
Yep.
Just let me know when you're ready to move on. Is everyone all set? Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, the town has began to make the commitment to hire the additional members by getting each group to 9, 2 in this fiscal year, 1 half-year position. So the expectation would be that in fiscal 21, whether it's a full year or half-year position, we would get that final position to get all of the groups to 9. So the SAFER grant, the Staffing for Adequate Firefighters for Emergency Response grant. The grant period, this is a federal program, opened on February 15th, and the closing date for the grant is March 22nd. So what I'm proposing is that we take the opportunity of the federal program to try to offset some of the costs that the town has made the commitment that they're going to do. So essentially, we're looking for 2 firefighters. One of those firefighters is already in the FY21 budget. But what I would propose is that we make a grant proposal for 2 firefighters. You can see starting on the top, the total salary over the 3-year grant period combined. You have the number there. Then the total estimated benefits gives us a total salary and benefits package over the 3 years of $557,967. So you can see under that, the federal government pays 75% of the total in year 1, 50% in year 2, 25% in year 3. So you can see just above that in the year 1, year 2, year 3 totals. And then underneath it would be what the town share would be, what the federal government share would be. So without the grant, again, the town is moving towards this commitment. So without the grant, the town would be responsible for the $557,967 over that 3-year period. But if we were successful in getting the grant award, it would save the town $275,145 over that 3-year period, making the town's total contribution of $282,821.39. So I guess in my mind, in speaking with the town manager, the CFO, this is something that we're making a move towards anyway. This is something that has been on town administration's priority list. So in my mind, it makes sense to at least apply for the federal funds to see if we can get some of these positions offset as a funding mechanism. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that the board has.
Mr. Holstrom.
Through the chair, these totals that you have here is salary and benefits, so the town will not be paying benefits? They'll only be paying, like say in the first year, will only be 25% of the benefits? Or will we, the town, have to absorb the benefits for all the employees? This is what I'm saying here right now is under the feds, it's 75%. 25% for the town, but year 1 total is $178,000. That's the salary plus the benefits, or are we just, is it just salaries we're talking about?
So if you look at, it says year 1 total, salary and benefits would be $178,447. So then underneath that, when you look at year 1, the federal government would pay 75%, so their share of that 178 would be 133.8. And then the town share would be 44.6. And then, again, when you go back up, year 2, total salary and benefits, you can see, and then underneath, it would give you, for each year, what the Fed share would be versus the town share.
Okay. If
Go ahead, Mr. Holstrom.
One of the concerns I had the last time we went through this, and it was for 8 men, I remember, from last year, and one of my concerns was the first 3 years, as you have here, we are at 25% in the 3rd year from the feds, and in the 4th year, we're 100% by the town. That's a good chunk of change, salary and benefits. Is there a program to subsidize by the town budget? Is there a plan to pay for these new positions at the end of the 4 years?
So let me answer your first point first, and then I would defer to the CFO for the year 4 question. So last year when I came before the board seeking the SAFER grant application for 8 positions, we were in a little different boat then. At that time, I was still seeking to raise the minimum from 6 to 7, and we, at that time, had no budgeted positions to move forward. So I was seeking a total of 4 positions to get the groups from 8 to 9. And then I've identified in my long-term plan over the next 3 to 5 years, depending on department makeup, call statistics, some of those factors. So I think I addressed this year in my annual town report as well. But I've expressed to town administration that over the next 3 to 5 years, we have to look at a number of factors and figure out whether or not we may need to move the shifts from 9 to 10. Because what I don't want to see happen is have another 18-year period where our minimum staffing stays the same even though call volume is rising. So last year, my request was a grant for 4 positions to get us from 8 to 9. And then I was seeking an additional 4 positions to go from 9 to 10. But I'll be quite honest with you, and we mentioned this last year, that if we were successful in that grant award, we were going to have to come back, have a much more serious discussion about really what to do with those other 4 positions. But why my request is not 8 or 6, why it's 2, is because what's happened over the last year is that the town has made movement by 2 positions to get 2 of the groups to 9. So I'm not interested at this time in going from 9 to 10. That's in my 3 to 5 year plan to evaluate that as to whether or not that's a necessity. But the immediate need right now is to get the remaining 2 groups from 8 to 9. Again, one of those positions is already in the FY21 budget, but instead of asking just for 1 position from the federal government, we may as well ask for 2, because if we can get them to assist us over the next 3 years for a position that's already budgeted, we'd be better served to do that. As far as the future years, I believe Mr. Kazanovich talked about this last year, but I would certainly turn to him about the future years.
Certainly, this is more palatable than the one that was presented to you last year. I had some concerns. We discussed that. In order to make a long-term commitment for 8 firefighters, the value of that set-aside was much greater than it is here. So if you follow, and I like how this is laid out, year 2, although our share is $92,860, we already built in $44,000 as our share in year 1. So the net gain in year 2 is roughly $48,000, not $92,000. And subsequent to that, in year 3, although our share is $145,000, we would need another $52,000 in the budget to meet that obligation. In the final year, we need $49,000, close to $50,000. When the chief said that we made a commitment, he actually asked for 2 this year, and we ultimately agreed upon a 1 full-time with a start date of January 1. So we're trying to make this plan work without really tying the hands of other departments who have other needs as well. I think Steve and the deputy recognize that we're going to do this when we can, with no firm commitment that we would automatically add 1 next year. I think under this plan, the federal government helps ease that pain a little bit by infusing a reimbursement amount that the town doesn't have to come up with that money. So it gives us some flexibility to assume that full cost 100% of that 1 firefighter over 4 years, because the federal government is participating in a portion of that salary. So it makes it more manageable for us to do that. Certainly, I think once you accept the grant, you're committing to this funding schedule. We believe it's doable without putting a constraint on the town's finances. But certainly, it is an obligation that we would have to address up front first, and whether it be through tax levy or through any other funds that may become available.
Keep going.
Okay, sorry. I guess the word that you used was palatable, which tells me, you know what, we can do it, but should we be doing it? I guess a question for the chief through the chair. I want to be sure I understand how many men you have on a shift now. You're talking 8 to 9, but you're talking 7. What is, you've got, you're going to have the shifts, you're going to have 9 men if you go along with this program, but you're also talking about 7 men per shift. Is that not including your management?
No, that's the minimum. So for currently there are...
That's what I want to understand.
Right. So currently there are 8 full-time firefighters assigned per group. Let's go back to last year before there was an addition. So last year there were 8 full-time firefighters per group. That has been the same shift staffing since 2006 with 8 members per group. With 8 members per group, we allow 2 members off due to vacation or personal days, paid time off, things like that. So our shift minimum is 6.
Okay.
This past January, we added 2 members to the department, so 2 groups are currently at 9. Okay. And then this 1 half-year position that is in the budget for this year will get 3 groups to 9, and then we still would need to get one more. So the goal is to get all 4 groups to 9 members, which by getting them to 9 members now ups our minimum shift staffing from 6 to 7, because we're still going to allow the same, 2 members off, but now the minimum staffing would be 7. So providing everybody's there, it's 9. So we could run in the course of a day anywhere from 7 to 9, depending on how many people are working. And that staffs 2 ambulances, a fire truck, and then the goal is that these positions will be assigned out West Street so we can maintain the West Street engine on a more consistent basis. Because right now there's only 3 members at West Street, so when there's an ambulance call, it leaves 1 member there. This member would allow us to at least keep 2 people on an engine at the West Street station.
Okay. My question, I guess, is, it sounds like the town is committed to this, one way or another. I don't know how you can commit money that hasn't been, budgeted or been through the Finance Committee, but I guess my question is, how's the staffing, how do you figure on the staffing? Is there a recommendation? Is there a requirement? Is there a standard? What is there that tells you have to have 9 men on a shift? With the 6 men, I know you're talking about 6 men minimum, but if you're talking about 9 men, now you can have that extra 1 if 2 people are out, so you'll have 7. What's the staffing requirements, recommendations, guidelines, standards? What?
That's a lengthy conversation. I don't know if we want to really talk about what the staffing requirements are, because the number is going to be much higher than 9. But the number is based on the actual activity that goes on within the community. I reported in the annual town report this year, our call volume's consistently been growing anywhere between 2 and 3% a year over the last several years. We had a 3.61% increase from 2017 to 2018. Within the next couple of years, we'll be pushing 4,000 emergency calls. When I got here in 2006, we were hovering somewhere around the 2,800 mark. So we've seen a substantial amount of call volume growth within the department. It's really, in my mind, I guess it's simple math. We operate 2 staffed fire stations with 2 paramedic level ambulances. So if we are at our minimum of 6 people, take 4 right out of the gate just to staff ambulances, that leaves 1 2-person engine company, which in my mind is, well, not just in my mind, a 2-person engine company is not safe staffing on an engine company. I'm trying to get that to 3. I'm trying to get 3 people on an engine company. So by having a shift minimum of 7, that allows us to staff 2 paramedic level ambulances and 1 3-person engine company. If we have a shift staffing of 9, it would be 6 members at headquarters to staff an ambulance, 5 members at headquarters to staff an ambulance and a 3-person engine, and 4 people out at West Street to staff an ambulance and a 2-person engine. So it's not really a magic formula. The town operates 2 staffed fire stations. So in order to staff 2 ambulances and 1 3-person engine and 1 2-person engine, the number is 9. So providing that we are at full staff at 9, we can do that. But on the days when we're at 7, then we're not going to be able to staff completely that engine out at West Street. So we're relying just on the single 3-person engine out of headquarters, which is why it's more important that we have the 3rd person on that engine if that's the only engine that's available.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I can address the issue, just to clarify, town administration didn't commit. We can't commit to the finances until it goes to the finance committee and town meeting.
Word in between,
we committed to a plan to address the staffing issue that the fire chief has explained to us. So we have made it very clear to the finance committee the last 2 years that one of our priorities was public safety, and that specifically it was the fire department. So for the last 2 years, we've said that to the finance committee. They have told us to come in with a plan for what we need based on what the chief's recommendation is for the minimum manning and the staffing and the call volume. So we have committed to finding a plan and developing a plan to ultimately get us there. In no means could we commit to doing that without any votes. We have had the votes. So town meeting and finance committee both approved the staffing levels that we put in for the last 2 years. We have, again, in this particular budget coming up, one additional staff person. We can't always meet the requests of the department heads, including the chief, and he'd be the first to tell you he has come before us with requests that we've had to say no to, but we are saying that we are doing our best to get him to where he needs to be, but it has to be a long-term commitment. It has to be a long-term plan. It can't be done in 1 fiscal year. It couldn't be done in 3 fiscal years. So our commitment to him was to look at putting positions in the budget over a long-term plan of 3 to 5 years to ultimately get him to that staffing of 9.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, just one more comment. I'm just looking at some quick stats here. Just over the past 8 years, in 2010, the department did 2,991 calls. We finished 2018 with 3,768. So we've seen significant call growth, but we haven't seen a change in our minimum staffing in that same time period. In 2018, our back-to-back calls, which what we classify within the department as back-to-back, is when one emergency call comes in, within 20 minutes of that emergency call, either a second or a third emergency call comes in. In 2018, 35.47% of our emergency calls, so a little over 1,300 calls, were classified in that back-to-back call volume. That's very difficult to do with 6 people. It's very difficult to do when you have 2 ambulances already on calls, and now you have a single engine company with 2 people trying to respond to multiple other emergencies. One person doesn't sound like a lot, but to be able to have that one supervisor or paramedic in a car that's able to answer those other back-to-back calls, that's big. Or to be able to have that third person on the engine company. So that's all.
Chief, I have a couple questions for you, and I'm glad you just mentioned that. You know, and I appreciate the information you put out on Facebook. Now, I think it was yesterday, it was in the recent days, might have even been today, you had a call where you said that they requested the second ambulance. So now you have the 2 ambulances tied up at one accident scene. Do you immediately alert for backup ambulance when that happens?
No, it's on a case-by-case basis. Okay. Typically what would happen is if both of our ambulances are tied up, we don't call in an ambulance for mutual aid coverage. We would just handle those requests as the medicals were coming in. So there is a little bit of a delay on those ambulances, which is why it's important to have staffing to make sure that we're responding on a first responder level.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems that the call volume is higher than it was.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
I have a couple questions on, and you can just refresh my memory because I know we talked about it a year ago. Talk a little bit about the process and the actual grant. Federal money, is it a more competitive grant?
It is. It's a nationwide competitive grant. So the application, I'm going to be appearing before the Finance Committee this Wednesday, and then I believe I'm going to be back here on March 11th, I believe, which is your next meeting.
The next meeting is March 11th. For a vote either to support or not support applying for the grant. So it is a nationwide competitive grant. Again, just to Mr. Holstrom's point earlier, one of the reasons that I was interested in going for the 8, and this was a topic of discussion last year, one of the reasons that I was going for the 8 was because if we're not successful in the grant, which we weren't, but we're able to get feedback as to where we fell short within the grant application. So that, again, that was another reason why I sort of wanted to go for the 8, even if we turned down the other 4 positions. I just wanted to see where we sat sort of nationwide competitively in terms of a rating or a grade on the application. So we were able to get some good feedback from the last grant process. I mean, there's no promises that we'll get it this time. There's a lot of departments that put in for it. But I think we got some good feedback on where the shortfalls of the last application were. Did you have anything?
I just had a few generic questions about the grant.
Sure.
About how many are available for departments across the country for the specific one?
So the federal government approves, and I don't have it in front of me, but they approve a pool of money, and then it's divided up really based on request. So we could submit for 2 positions, and let's say they approve the town of Auburn, they'll take the 557, and then that just sort of deducts from the bottom. There is no set number of departments that they set out to fund. It's really when the money dries up, so they look at each individual application and each individual need of the department, and they rank them, and then they start with the highest priority to the lowest priority, and that's how they award the grants. So they don't set out in the course of a year to say, we're going to fund 200 fire departments. They may only fund 100, depending on what the needs were in the request. So, for example, the town of Dudley got 1 position last year, but there were other departments that got 20 positions. So you really don't know sort of what's going to come in from around the country and what the need level is.
Is there potential for them to just approve 1 if we applied for 2 positions? Can they change it?
So they could. We could submit for 2, and then we could get a phone call, and they could say, we would like to make you an offer, we'll modify your grant, we can give you 1 position or 2, and then that's something we would have to come back here and discuss as to whether or not that's something that they would want to entertain. But yes, they can modify our request if they don't have enough money to fund it.
Yeah, those were the only questions I had. I know every time I talk to you, you talk about how the last year was the highest call volume that you've had, so I know it's a running.
It seems like I get to say that every year now for the past 7, so.
Do we have anything else on this? Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you very much.
I hope you'll outreach our 2 members. Obviously, they can't discuss it with other members of the board, but...
Yes, I certainly can.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Thank you. Going back to our agenda, we have gift acceptance in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, and to the Auburn Fire Rescue Department from Frederick Lacasse, and the amount of $200 to the Fire Department gift account. Is there a motion?
Motion approved with gratitude.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Next, under proclamations, we have a request for an Eagle Scout proclamation for Stephen Marshall. I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen's project, and that should read Buddy Benches, not Ventures. So Stephen provided a couple of buddy benches at the public schools, and also did the borrow book boxes, which you may see at the Lemansky and at the Pappas Recreation Complex. He's gone through his approval process, and he will be earning his Eagle Scout Award at his Court of Honor on March 16, 2019. And this fits in accordance with our proclamation policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for an Eagle Scout proclamation for Stephen Marshall.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Jacobson, do you want to add anything to the Standard & Poor's bonding upgrade or the grant application?
I would, to the Standard & Poor's, I just want to thank the members of the financial team as well as all the town employees and department heads that participated in that process. I think I mentioned it last time, but the bond rating process takes months. We start doing it at least 6 months prior to going out for our bond rating, and it involves every department in town providing information to us to make our official statement, which is a very large, probably a 3-inch thick document on all of the financials and economics of the town. So it is a very lengthy process, and it's a challenge to get it all together, but I want to thank everyone for prioritizing it and getting us the information we needed. And again, we're thrilled to keep our bond rating. We are going to try to do what we can on the wealth factors to try to get it up over time, but we have had 2 bond rating upgrades in the last 7 years, so we're happy with that. And again, just on the SAFER grant, I just want to reiterate, just for Mr. Holstrom and anyone else, just to be sure, when we say we're making a commitment to address, it doesn't mean that we have committed any funds. We don't have that authority to do that. It is a commitment on a number of different levels with different departments to look at their needs over the next few years in the long term. We recognize all of our departments have needs, and they're not all going to be met in the short term. So we do have several long-term plans to try to address all the needs of our departments, and we prioritize it every year based on the funding that we have coming in. So I appreciate the chance to explain that, and we were hoping to give you 2 weeks, or at least 2 weeks, to think about how to move forward on this and whether to move forward on this. So we were not requesting a vote this evening anyway. And as the chief said, it is going to the Finance Committee for their conversation. Although they don't need to vote on it, it is a Board of Selectmen vote as to whether to apply for and accept funds. So, thank you.
Thank you. Under tabled items, we will leave this tabled. We have the draft of the proposed debt management policy, but it's my understanding that's going to Finance Committee
Yes, that
Wednesday.
will be discussed
Okay.
Wednesday evening
So it'll
for
come-
finance.
Okay. It'll come back before the board on the 11th. There are no Board of Selectmen member items. There's no one here for public comment. Is there anything else? If not, we have the minutes of February 11th, 2019. Are there any corrections or omissions? Great job on those minutes, Sharon. Thank you. If there are no corrections or omissions, the chair will accept them as written. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.